Everybody, it's Dan Mori. Welcome back to Staffing Monthly. And I just know that we've been spending a lot of time on this big challenge of how to get more and better candidates into your pipeline, into your agencies to help you fill more of your job orders. Because I know that that's really what you're trying to work hard at right now. And, we dug into it all last month. We had some great interviews in this issue talking exactly about how to do that, how to attract talent, how do you train talent, what are you teaching them to have them be producers. But at this time of the year, I do not want to lose sight of a very important strategic piece. And that's really the strategic planning, right? Like as you get into, October and you're moving into next month, you should start be doing your three-quarter look back to see how you're doing, progressing on your goals. And, if you have a chance to actually kick and hit your goals this year, or, what does it look like? This is really the last quarter that you have to build momentum to set you up for 2023, and for the next year to come. So with that, I know that we all come from different backgrounds. We're all at different levels in this industry, and we all have different focuses and roles, but not everybody is as well versed or experienced or has gone through, a strategic plan exercise or a goal setting exercise. And I've got a little bit of a different way to do it. Me, I'm not super technical with things. I like to keep things simple so we can run fast. So I just want to walk you through something that, it's a great overview for how to do strategic planning, how to set a goal, and how to actually align your organization, resources, and people to work towards that goal. So with that, let's get kicked off. So here you should be seeing my title slide of, clear instructions, clear results. And I think that's a great title. This is something that is, from the old Army days with me. If you want an expected result, you have to give clear instructions, and they teach this in boot camp. And when you're calling cadence, and it's, there's someone that's leading the formation and they're going to yell out, a cadence, they're going to yell out a part of a song, and it's an instruction. And then the entire group, the entire platoon or company or whatever is going to respond back in a very prescribed way. And it works like clockwork. And then you got, drill and ceremony, or even just formation commands, the leader is going to yell out a command, and the entire group, again, it could be, a squad, a platoon, a company, whatever, is going to respond with a movement all synced. So how does the military do that? How do they create such a synchronization? And it comes down to teaching clear instruction, clear results. If you give a clear instruction, you get clear results. Teach the clear instruction, explain what those clear results are. And that really is the foundation of strategic planning, is you have to say, hey, this is our goal. This is what we're going to do. And this is the result that we're looking for, right? You have to teach that component of it and to make this really work. So clear instruction, clear results. I want to get this kicked off. So obviously you all know me here because you're looking at this magazine. But an email, if you want to get a hold of me, dan@staffingmastery.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Please do connect. I love connecting with each of you and getting some of your questions and feedback about, the magazine we're putting on or some of the other Staffing Mastery content. And if there's ever speakers that you would love to see in here, definitely let me know, or connect me to them. That would be fantastic. And obviously Staffing Monthly here. So what is step one? This is the easy one. This is actually the stuff that everybody, I can't even say everybody, because I know some people that don't actually set goals. They just get at it. But step one, you need to establish your goal vision. You need to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. Now, this is not setting a goal. This is just establishing the goal vision. What is it that you want to achieve? And for the sake of today's presentation, we're going to talk about $100 million in revenue. Let's say that's your target. You want to grow to 100 million, in revenue. I'm going to show you the steps and walk you through how to ensure that's a good goal and how to set yourself up for success in achieving this goal, if it is even feasible. Now, everything I'm going to share after this would apply if this goal was 1 million or 10 million or 50 million. It doesn't really matter what this is. This is just for, example's sake. So with that, most leaders have great vision. Most people can come up with a goal vision. They can say, that's where I want to go. It's actually a depth perception problem that gets them in trouble, meaning where you want to go. You can look out on the horizon and say, that's where I'm going. I want to be a $100 million agency. I want to be a $10 million agency. I want to book $1 million in perm placement fees this year. You can say that, but it's the area between where you're at today and where that end goal is that gets foggy. You don't have clear visibility between those 2 points, and that's what's going to get you in trouble. And that's what I hope to clear up for you today by walking you through this very simple process to help get clarity in that point and help keep you on the right track to increase your chances of success for achieving that goal. So here's the old way. Typically speaking, when a company said, hey, we're going to, set this goal, it was very arbitrary. They basically just picked an arbitrary year-over-year growth percentage target that they were hoping to get. And a lot of times it's like, hey, we want double-digit growth, so we need at least 10% growth, right? And, so it might sound something like this. Oh, well, we closed out last year at $90,909,090 in revenue, and we want to grow 10%. So next year, our goal is $100 million. Now, ironically, if their goal is $90,909,090, that's actually a more realistic goal because that's like a more believable number that can be done. It's not likely that someone's going to do exactly $1 million, right? But that's the old way. People will say, this is what we did. We want to grow by 10%. They'll tack the 10% on, and that'll be their goal, right? So then their next step, the old way next step, is to plot out quarterly growth goals based on hitting that $100 million number. And it might be like, they might say, okay, so our Q1 target's going to be 23 million. Q2, we're going to do 24 million. Q3, we're going to hit 26. Q4, we're going to close out around 27 million. That's going to give us our $100 million in revenue. And then they really assess a pass fail based on those particular goals. And that can get you in trouble because if you don't hit 23 million in the first quarter for some reason, most likely what they're going to do is they're just going to pack it on to the back end. They're going to be like, oh, we missed 23 million. We only did 20. So now Q2 is going to be 25 million and Q3 is going to be 27 million and Q4 is going to be 28 million goals, right? And they just keep compounding the loss as they go forward. And it's like, it makes the distance that you have to grow from the quarter that you might have missed your target into the end line greater. And that actually can decrease your chance for success, and it can actually demoralize the organization. So it's a little bit of an arbitrary way of doing it. And I get it, because forecasting and setting plans, it's not easy. It really isn't. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, especially in this industry, that where there's recruiting and sales and everything going on. It's really hard to understand this unless you follow a simple plan. So for me, step 2 is actually validating the goal with data. Just because we say we want to do $100 million, that's aspirational. That doesn't mean it's actually feasible or it's viable, right? So you have to actually look at data to determine, is this $100 million goal something that's actually achievable? And if that's the case, then yeah, let's set that goal. But if the data tells us something other than that, then realistically, we should set a goal that what data suggests can actually occur, right? Like let's make achievable goals and let's work towards them and blow past them, which is a better outcome than setting lofty goals and missing them, right? So realistically, the first question is, when someone says, oh, my goal is 100 million in revenue, my first question is okay, well, what does it take to achieve $100 million in revenue? Like, what has to happen? What does your business look like in order to generate that kind of revenue? And then obviously, if you're in contingent and staffing, you have existing clients, you have kind of a little bit of continuity in your business with, repeat clients and orders and long tail billing and all of that stuff. So the first question is, how much of that 100 million is going to come from existing clients? And this is where things can get a little ambiguous. I know this is not super easy just to know off the top of your head, because at this size of a company, you're definitely billing lots and lots of clients, most likely, unless you're overly concentrated in some big ones. But most agencies, when they get to this level, they've got branches and a lot of clients. So it's really kind of hard to know without doing some exercises where it's going to come from. And the good news is, and the reason I got this asterisk on the screen is, there's a year-over-year revenue exercise that you can do that is not going to be precise, but it's going to get you roughly right. And when you're dealing with these kind of numbers and these kind of goals, roughly right is going to give you enough certainty to move forward on your plan. And that's really what you're looking for. Okay. So here, that's where you would do your year-over-year exercise. I could do a whole other talk on that one right there. I geek out on that kind of stuff. But just to summarize it, just take a look at your track record over your last 3 or 4 years and look at, how much gross margin carries forward from client to client. And that's going to give you a pretty good trend line of what your client retention rates it's going to give you a pretty good idea of what your client retention rates are and how much you should be able to expect to carry forward. Obviously, if you just landed a massive account in Q4 that hasn't really had a chance to materialize, you can make some manual adjustments based on knowns. But for the most part, just doing a year over year revenue retention exercise, like I just explained, will give you great insight and be a good starting point to help you understand, okay, well, how much revenue is going to come from existing clients? And then the delta, whatever you get, if you say, hey, we're going to get $90 million from existing clients, retain nearly 100% of what you did last year. Well, how much needs to come from new clients? Like, how many do we need? And that's going to basically say, well, we need to get $10 million from new clients. Okay, well, how many new clients is that? What is your average value of a client? How much, revenue does your average client generate in a year? How often do you generate clients? And that will give you a sense of knowing how many new clients are we going to need to make up that difference, right? And get us to that 100 million. And then there's some data points that you're going to want to know, like how many temps or contractors do we need working? Like, what does our average headcount need to look like in order to achieve this? And generally, we plot this on a kind of a linear growth line that shows this, and it goes up with like headcount and hours and all of that stuff. And there's multiple reasons why this is an important question to know. One, it's going to say, hey, what work do we need to do? How many people do we need working? So this is going to tell you how much work you're going to have to do in order to fill those jobs, how many orders you're going to need to work on and all that stuff. So it's going to set the tone of the work that really goes into doing this, but also it's going to let you know, like, do you have the capacity to handle it? If you need to get to a headcount level and all of your recruiters are completely tapped, you might need to hire a new recruiter internally just to get you there. Or maybe you process your own payroll internally and your payroll department's maxed out. And maybe you're like, wow, doing payroll for all these other people, you might need to hire somebody. So it starts to give you a little bit of a good shape or a good lens to see your company through about what a $100 million operation looks like. And not just any $100 million operation, your $100 million operation, how you built your company. So it helps you manage resources and identify constraints there. And you want to know, what's the value of each headcount? This is a key data point that you're going to want to be measuring, because this can be, I guess, adjusted. I don't want to use the word, not a negative, but it can be manipulated to help you get to your goal and make your recruiters' lives easier, right? If you realize that, hey, the value of a temporary or contractor is X, and I'm going to need, Y number of those to get to 100 million billing each week. If you can increase the value of that through pay rate increases, bill rate increases, marginal increases, all that kind of stuff, it's going to help you hit your goal with less headcount. Less headcount is easier to accomplish, right? So there's things that you need to know there. So understanding the value of each headcount is really important for some decisions you're going to have to make later on as you're managing your business. How many does each headcount bill? This is another one, because again, as we're plotting our linear growth line, it's going to be measured in headcount and hours. That's like how we're going to forecast this, because headcount and payroll hours, all that, that's the foundation of any forecasting that we're going to do. And it's going to basically visualize the growth that we need to see. And we'll be able to track and measure our performance against that trend line, right? How many perm direct hire fees do we need to be? I know that we all mix that line of business in varying ways in our business. So you need to just map this out. Like, where does the money come from? And if you go through these questions and you really dig into it, and you can lay out with a level of confidence that you're going to get enough business from existing clients, you have a strong sales team that can make up the difference. They're going to get the orders, and you have the capacity and resources available to grow your temporary contingent contractor base, or you actually have ability to raise the value of your headcount to hit it. Once you validate that this is a good goal, then you actually want to measure for the feasibility of it. Okay, what is the work that needs to be done? We say, hey, it's possible, right? We think that we can do this. We've got the pieces in place, but now is it actually feasible? Going back to, some of those questions will start to highlight the constraints that you might have in your business. What work needs to be done to achieve the goal? What work needs to be done to get the headcount? What work needs to be done to get those clients and orders? If you're like, hey, we need to acquire 50 new clients this year or next year in order to hit that goal, do you have a sales team that can go out and get 50 clients? Can they actually be getting 4 to 5 clients a month? And do they make the calls and send the emails and do the networking? And Do they have the system in place to actually go out and get that? You know, headcount. Do you have your recruiting system in place to actually go out and make sure you're always funneling talent so you got people on the bench that you can deploy quickly? You know, does your team have the capacity, ability, and resources to complete the work? Right? If the capacity is not there, you increase capacity kind of one of three ways. One, you hire more people, increasing the overall capacity of the organization. Two, you look at your current people's capacity and you can try to increase it a little bit. It's marginal, but you can sometimes increase capacity through efficiency gains. And those efficiency gains can be from skilling up, you know, maybe watching what they're doing and actually, you know, teaching them new skills or processes, or efficiency gains from, you know, maybe they're doing something that doesn't need to be done, or maybe they're doing something in a way that could be done quicker, right? And you figure that out. Or technology, maybe you look at what they're doing and you're like, hey, there's this actually tool out here that could automate some of these steps. You know, there's a great tool that just hit the market, you know, that can automate the job posting and the search and the notification to the candidates and all that stuff, and deliver a short list to the recruiter. Like, that can get a little bit of time back in their day every time they do a search, right? So like, you can look at that piece of the process. You know, do they have the resources in place? You know, that's what you want to be looking at. And this is going to actually help you set your, you know, professional development and resource development plan for the year. Because if you're growing an organization at this level, you know, you grow by growing your people. You should always be having a plan in place to skill your people up and be developing them upward, because that will increase their capacity and ultimately their performance. But then also, you should be thinking about, what are the new resources that our company can benefit from, and what are we going to focus on rolling out this year that's going to make our teams more effective, right? So that's really how you want to be looking at that side of it. So now, let's just say you go through and the 100 million is viable, meaning that we've actually validated it with data and we've got the pieces in place. We've looked at our team, they've got capacity, they've got the skills, we've got a resource plan in place, and we believe that 100 million is a realistic goal. Now we're going to set the goal. This is step 4. Most people, they set the goal at step 1, and then they tell the goal is step 2, and then they get to work blindly at step 3, I guess. But step 4, we're not even actually setting the goal until step 4 in this system here, but you're going to set it. And then realistically, you need to plot that linear growth forecast to say, hey, this is where I'm at today, and this is where I need to grow to. And it's going to be an upward trending line. And as you're plotting it, it's going to be a straight line. It's never going to look like that in staffing. Some days you're going to be high, some weeks you're going to be low. Like, it's going to be all over the place, but you need to have some sort of trend line just to measure your performance against, so you can see if you're on track or not, and how likely you are to actually hit that final goal. You know, if you have some level of seasonality in your business, definitely adjust for that. You know, if you do a ton of business in Q4, you know, you can make it doesn't have to be completely linear. It can be adjusted for your business if you know confidently the business trends that impact your business. But for the most part, I generally just plot a linear growth line. And this is going to start to tell me, you know, what headcount needs to increase week to week, what payroll hours or billable hours need to increase week to week. And that will tell me, you know, this is what a growth plan looks like, right? So at this point, you know, I'd be taking questions and seeing who has questions about this. If you do have questions and you're like, hey, how do we do this? Shoot me an email at Dan@staffingmastery. But step 5, this is where you plan the work. You know, this is where you're in that final quarter of the year. This is really what, you know, if you're an owner, this is the type of work that you should be doing, you know. And if you're not as familiar with this type of stuff and you want my help, just let me know. But if you're in a leadership team or your managers, you know, this is really what they should be doing in Q4 of the year. And in December, they should really be, you know, finalizing the work plan, so they can be rolling this out to people at the very beginning of the year in January and saying, hey, we know what we need to do. We know how we need to increase the headcount, the billable hours, the clients that need to come in. And based on all of that, we're going to create our marketing and sales plan, you know. And marketing is going to be client side marketing and recruitment marketing. You know, you're going to take some of the feedback that you've heard from Matt Lozar in prior issues. If you've not seen that about programmatic, go check that out. Julie Callie, who did a deep dive on the 4 pillars of recruitment marketing a couple months ago, go check her interview out. But this is where you're going to lay out your marketing and sales plan. You're going to say, hey, how do we attract talent, and how do we attract clients to start filling the very top of each of those funnels? And then the sales plan, salespeople, what is your goal? You know, what do you need to be doing? What is your plan? You know me, you've heard my model. I like to work in quarterly plans, 13-week plans, and really like 12-week plans where there's a week for planning in there to continue to make sure you can roll into the next one. So you're not just going from back to back to back. Like you need to have a bit of time to breathe, but you got to lay it out. How many prospects do we need in the pipeline? How many, if we're going to need, 50 clients, how many meetings do we need to get? How many proposals need to be sent out? How many prospecting behaviors need to be had? Right. So like, you want to plan all of that out on the front end and then work towards it. You want to create a recruiting plan. This is where you lay down like, hey, if we're going to grow from the current headcount we're at today to the headcount we need to be at by the end of the year, you got to create a recruiting plan. Do you have people that are just out there and they're just like recruiting people all the time and they're pipelining talent and getting them into your ATS? And then they're looking at the big board that the account managers have, and they're looking, oh yeah, I can fill this, or I got talent for this and this, and they're just kind of doing internal submissions to the account managers. You have full desk recruiters. Like think about what you need to be doing to kind of take off of that marketing that's jumping people into your pipeline and moving people through the pipeline efficiently, so you can be submitting them to job orders, right? Like what is that recruitment plan? How does that all work? You need to be laying that out, and then again, teaching it to your people. Just because someone has been there forever doesn't mean that a good reinforcement isn't beneficial. They need to coordinate the necessary training and resources. Look at your plan and say, do my people have the ability to carry this out? And what skill development do we need to focus on to make sure that they're going to be optimizing this all through the marketing, sales, recruiting, all of that? Like what training do I need to do to make sure they're up to speed, and what resources do I need to give to them? And again, your job as a leader, if you're looking at this, and really anyone in the industry can do this and make these suggestions, but your responsibility as a leader is to always be knowing what is going on in our industry. What are the new tools and resources? There's new stuff coming out all the time that are built to make the lives of recruiters and salespeople just easier, So you got to know, like, what are those tools, resources? What are those best practices, and how do I get those and fit those properly into my system to help my marketing and sales plan, help my recruiting plan, and make my lives of my people easier, right? Plan any necessary hires. Remember, if we talked about capacity constraints, and one of the ways to increase capacity is making a hire, you might say, hey, I don't need to hire anybody right now, but I know the team that I have is going to be, they're going to break if I try to basically push them all the way to this end goal. Figure out what point you need to hire somebody, and don't wait until your team is breaking. Plot it out a little bit before that and say, hey, how much time do I have to train somebody before my team breaks, so they're going to actually hit the ground running before my team breaks, and we can offload some of that work and then grow, right? Make sure you plan out necessary hires so you can get, do the recruitment piece of it, the vetting, and you're actually, working it through a flow so you can hit the ground running at the right time and not starting the hire when your team is breaking, right? Now it's time to determine key performance indicators. And we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive, on this in the next slides here. But once you have this, then you need to determine the communication and accountability plan. Okay. It is easy to make this decision. It is easy to say, this is what we're going to do. Managing decisions is where success comes from. Making decisions is easy. Managing decisions is critical, right? So you need to have a communication and accountability plan. This is literally like, hey, we're going to communicate this. We're going to basically announce what the plan is and teach it to the team on this day. And maybe you have a annual kickoff call. Maybe the first day everyone comes back from the holidays in January and like, hey, we're going to have this meeting. Maybe you've got an annual strategic meeting where you teach it to your leaders and you expect them to roll it out. Whatever it is, there needs to be a clear communication plan of how everyone is going to be made aware of this plan and what their contributions are to this plan, which we're going to talk about later. And then there has to be regular check-ins. Maybe you do daily huddle closest to the dollar, or a weekly huddle, or maybe it's like, hey, we're going to check in monthly, or whatever that is. But you need to have regular communication plans, and I prefer really no more than weekly. Like your team should be getting together weekly and say, hey, this is what we did towards the plan. And then have some more formal check-ins, right? Have like a quarterly meeting with the team, like an all call, like, hey, everybody, just want to do a quarterly business review internally for ourselves and talk about our goal was this. We said we needed to do this amount of work. This is what actually happened, and this is where we're at on the plan. We're above, we're below. Here's what needs to change. Good job, celebrate them. And like you focus on building that piece out. And then there's the accountability plan. And this is really not accountability then there's the accountability plan. And this is not accountability in a negative way. This is accountability to the actual plan to say, hey, are we doing what we said we were going to do? right? And then how do you figure that out? You actually teach your people how to report back to you, right? We don't need to have 8-hour meetings or incredibly long team meetings. Like, you can have a simple reporting format that just said, my goal for the week was to do this. I had to, call this number of prospects and this many emails. I had this many meetings. My goal was to get this many referrals, right? And this is what I actually did. You can have everyone submit a performance report back to you, sort of templated in 1 minute. Everyone's just reporting in, they're checking in, and then the leader gets all that information and they can get a sense from the people, like, okay, am I setting up for success? Or is there something going on in the business that's preventing people from hitting their goals or doing what they said that they were going to do or honoring their commitments, right? You want to figure that piece out as a leader, and you just plan that. One of the things that I teach is a very simple reporting template that just says, hey, just report your performance in this method. And it works fantastic for salespeople who are notorious for hating sales meetings, right? It's just a quick this is what I did. Here's my results. I'm out, right? And it's a super effective way to do it. It's a great use of time to allow us to free up our time to focus on what really matters the most. Now, jumping into it, KPIs, obviously key performance indicator. It is something that indicates key performance. Key performance is what you want to achieve. The first, top definition here is just a mashup of the top 2 Google results. A KPI is a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively a company is achieving key business objectives or making progress toward an intended result. That's a good definition. What I look at is something a little bit more simple and maybe lay terms here, but a KPI must be a simple, well-known, and easy to understand metric that will provide instant feedback or insight about the performance of your company as it relates to the plan. Okay, simple, well-known, and easy to understand, meaning it's something that your people in your business focus on all the time, right? I've worked with a lot of leaders, and it's very buzzworthy to have KPIs that are key financial metrics or certain ratios and it's like, when you go to have that conversation to look into why your KPI is at or below or above where it's supposed to be, if you need to translate it to your people every single time, it's going to be confusing and it's going to slow you down. So you need to be thinking about, what are the KPIs that actually relate to what my people are doing in this business, because they're the performers, they're the main contributors. So it needs to be things like, hours or headcount or contacts or clients or things like that, the things that they're focused on. Like and if you want to know, the best way to really figure this out is just ask them, hey, our goal, we validate it, we believe it's possible. How would you measure your daily output? What would you focus on that would be the best indicator that we're on a path to success? And they might say things like, oh, it's going to be send outs or candidate submissions or interviews or placements. They're going to tell you a lot of different things. Listen to what they're saying, because those are the things that they focus on in their regular day. A lot of recruiters will focus on billable hours. Hey, if I'm billing at this level, I'm billing at this level. That's great. Some people focus on headcount. I like both of those. I think they go on my standard KPI dashboard for a reason, right? Because they're really good ones. They're core to our industry and the staffing industry. Now, what's great about this is that once you focus the KPIs in that level, anybody can understand them. Anybody can know this. So KPIs, they must be objectively measurable. They must be something, it's not anecdotal, it's not subjective, it's not feedback. Oh, I have a lot of good meetings in the pipeline. Oh, KPI, no, it doesn't work that way. Like, it has to be objectively measurable. Ideally, it's something that you can just pull the data point out of a system, out of your software ATS. They must be relative to the target plan, okay? The details are in the delta, meaning that, like, you have that linear growth plot that we talked about, right? If your KPI is higher than that, really you want to know what happened to be above plan. Or if your KPI is lower than that, you want to know what happened to be lower than that. It's going to be, the details are in the delta as it's related to your target plan, right? So must have a defined measurement period that correlates with the plan. I also think this should correlate with your communication plan. So I like weekly plans, and I like KPIs that can be measured on the week. This was our headcount this week. This was our billable hours this week. And if you plotted that linear plan, that growth plan, those two things can be measured against each other. It's super simple, right? So must define a person as the keeper. I know back in the day they used to say the one neck to grab. I think that's a little bit a little bit rough, but you must define a person as the keeper. This is the person in your company that is going to be the single person. Define a person that is responsible for this KPI. Now, everyone contributes to it, but there has to be somebody that is the expert of it. So if it's an operations or recruiting based KPI, maybe it's going to be, one of your recruiters, or it's going to be the recruiting manager or the operations manager. If it's a sales centric KPI, something in the sales funnel that we're measuring, it's going to be a salesperson or a sales manager or the VP of business development or something in the sales channel. But there has to be one person that's the keeper of the KPI. And this way, when something goes awry, you can go to that person and seek to understand, which we're going to talk about, right? You also must clearly understand how the KPI affects the goal. KPIs are super buzzworthy. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I got KPIs and I got all these metrics and whatnot. And it's like, the reality is KPIs are for your benefit, not for the benefit of anyone else that's listening to you talk about them. You need to have something. And if you can get down to 3 KPIs for your business, 1 KPI. One thing that I love about the sports world is they've got an incredible amount of data and statistics, but when it comes to rating certain positions, they've got these kind of mashup KPIs. And in the quarterback world, they got the QBR, right? What's the quarterback rating QBR? And it's just great. It basically measures all these different variable points, but it puts it into one area and it's objectively measurable. So if you have the ability to do something like that with your organization, great. Me, I typically look at probably 6, 8, 9 KPIs, depending on different areas of the organization, but that's it. But every single one of them, I can tell you why they matter to the goal. And every agency is a little bit different. Every agency has different operating mechanisms, different goals. So your KPIs can shift from organization to organization. They can shift from year to year, depending on, what you're trying to do with your company. But that's a big thing. You must understand how they're going to affect the goal. Obviously, we talk about that linear growth plan. I've mentioned it a few times now. Billable hours and headcount makes sense, right? Because your billable hours need to be higher at the end. Your headcount needs to be higher at the end than it was at the beginning. So that's a very natural one. That's a KPI that you can be looking at. If our headcount is up, that indicates that you're on track for your key performance, right? Also, we must know what action to take if the KPI indicators, or if it indicates that we're not on track, right? So what do? What are the KPIs in your business? Think about this. Think about what you can be doing that fits this list here. But I just want to dig into one, and then I want to answer that question, like, what do you do, right? So you can see an example of it, because you as leaders, just like you train your recruiters how to recruit and you train your salespeople how to sell and do all of that stuff, as leaders, and if you're an owner or, kind of senior level leader doing this, this is what you focus on teaching your people. They need to know how to read a KPI dashboard and what to do based in different scenarios, right? So obviously we've talked about the linear growth plan. Payroll hours is pretty central. It's measurable, on a weekly basis. It hits all the criteria that we laid out. So if in your forecast, you have weekly payroll hours in week 13 to be 50,549, and that just happens to be where the line is on your way to 100 million in revenue. If your weekly payroll hours that week happen to be 51,202, that indicates you're at a pace. That's green, you're good, right? Now, if you're shocked by that and you're like, wow, that's really weird. We were at 48,000 last week and I don't think we're going to be at 51,000 next week. Maybe it's worth looking into. I tend to tell people, as busy as we all are in this industry, that if a KPI is green this week, don't worry about it. You don't worry about all the service lights on your dashboard in your car if they're not on, right? And that's really what a KPI dashboard is. It's kind of like the dashboard of your car. Whereas if something flashes red, your tire pressure monitor comes on. Hey, I should put some air in my tire. If your check engine light comes on, hey, I should call the service station, right? Unless you're super handy and can do all that yourself. I'm not really. But if your forecast estimate, again, if you had that linear growth plot out there, and in week 13 it was 50,549, if that was your target, if that's kind of your plotted line for your plan, and your weekly payroll hours were only 49,873, that should be flashing red on your KPI dashboard. That should say, hey, something's up. Now, generally speaking, I'm not an alarmist. I don't want to freak out. If your tire pressure gauge comes on in your car, there's a good chance it's just saying, hey, it's a little bit soft. next time you're at the gas station, put a little air in it, right? You don't need to freak out. You don't need to pull over. You don't need to call AAA in that moment, most likely. Sometimes maybe you do if it's really bad, but there's going to be another indicator in that situation. So, but if this happens, here's typically what I recommend. Okay. One, and if you've got a dynamic KPI dashboard where you can actually go back and look at historic weeks to see, hey, was this red last week? Maybe you've got great memory and you can recall that. But I like to go back and look at the last few weeks and see, did this kind of fall off, or is this an outlier? Is this, oh, it's a holiday week? You know what? Yeah, this really, we're going to be down this week. I'm just going to wait and see what happens next week. And if it goes up red next week, then I'm going to look into it, right? But if you look and you're like, the last few weeks it was red and it doesn't seem like it's really improving, and maybe the delta is widening between, where we're at and where we need to be, and we know that next week the line's going to continue to go up. It's a growth line, right? So you might want to look into it, right? So that's what do you do? That was the last question a couple slides ago that I breezed past because I knew we'd get into it. You need to seek to understand by having a discovery type conversation with the KPI keeper. Okay. So when you're setting your KPIs and you say, hey, payroll hours in this example is going to be one of our KPIs. We know we have a forecast of what billable hours we should have, each week between, all 52 of them. And every single week, we're going to take a measurement, say how we did, and we're going to compare it to that number. And if we start to see a trend where we're not hitting, we're just going to say that, Sharif, you are the KPI keeper here. You're the operations person. So you are going to be the one that's the KPI keeper. So if I start to have questions about this, I'm going to come to you and I want to find out why. So you need to make sure that you're fully aware of everything going on in the organization, all the things that contribute to payroll hours or all the other and the KPIs that you could actually be the keeper of, head count, things like that. So when I come ask you this question, you can give me some insights and we can make some decisions together. It starts like this. Hey, Sharif, I was looking at the KPI dashboard and I noticed that our payroll hours were a little bit under where we had intended to be at this point of the year. Any idea why? Any insight into what's going on? And Sharif might say something like, he's like, yeah, we had a holiday this week, or yeah, there was actually one of our large clients, shut down, or there was a hurricane in Florida and production in this location just kind of dropped, or something. He might have a legitimate thing, be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good, and that means the system's working, right? Your tire light came on, you went, tire's a little soft, put a little air in, understand it, good to go, right? Or, Sharif might be like, I don't really know, like we just, we don't really have orders. Well, what do you mean? And that's a whole other conversation. Again, I could talk for, I've delivered that KPI workshop just on that one, over an hour, 2-hour session, just about how do you actually dig into that one. It's like, okay, well, if the payroll hours aren't there, it means we don't have headcount. Well, how are we filling orders? Do we have good orders? Do we have bad orders? What do we need to do there? Does sales have to go get better orders? Or, if we've got the orders and we're just not filling them, is it a recruiting problem? Do we just not have a candidate flow? Or is it a recruiter problem? Are people at capacity, or do they need to be skilled up, or do we have the wrong people in the wrong seats working on this stuff? Like, you start to actually get into those things based on what the KPI is telling you, and again, that's usually only after a few weeks of trending in the wrong direction. So you can actually get in and dig into it. You don't want to be an alarmist overreactor that as soon as it flashes red one time that you're trying to rebuild the organization, right? But just know you should have a plan, and you as leaders should be trained on how to investigate and seek to understand every KPI when they're not performing, so you can actually gather the insights and the information that you need, so you can actually make the right decisions that will improve the KPI and help you get your goal. Step 6. Okay, now that we've done all of that planning, we've got all of our KPIs set up, we know how to manage it, we've got our goal, our work plans, everything is kind of set up. We've built our communication and accountability plan. Woof! Being a leader is a lot of work, isn't it? I see why a lot of people don't do this, right? Mostly because they don't have a simple framework like this. And hopefully if you have a step-by-step framework like this, it's going to make your lives a lot easier. But you got to cast a vision. You got to have that first communication meeting that we talked about, that, maybe you do it at the beginning of the year and it's like, hey, this is our resolution meeting. This is what we're going to resolve to do this year, right? Maybe that's a bad example because people are like, their resolutions only last like a week or two. But you want to share the goal of the team and say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and you need to tell them why it's possible. You need to basically cast the vision, not just like tell them like, hey, this is what our goal is this year, right? Be like, hey, we've done all this analysis, we've looked at this, and we believe this is possible. You want to instill hope. Like that is an amazing thing to do. If your people are hopeful and they believe that the goal can be achieved, they're more likely to achieve it, right? So share the goal with your team and explain why it's possible. Explain where you currently are. When I was in the military doing land navigation, those were two of the most important things: where you're at and where you want to go. And then you plot your course, right? Which is the work that you just did. Hey, this is where we're at today. This is where we're going, right? And now we talked about, you don't want to have that depth perception, kind of fuzzy vision issue. You want to share with them, this is how we're going to get to where we're going, and give them clarity in the work plan. So everyone knows exactly what they need to do. You want to give them clear instruction so they can give you a clear result, right? Discuss the importance of the goal. Hey, this is why this goal is important, right? And really, if you're a great organization and you know your people, you're going to be able to explain the importance about why it's important to the company. Maybe you say, hey, only less than 1% of the agencies in our industry cross that $100 million threshold. So this is going to make us achieve an amazing milestone in our industry and really show that our team is among the best of the best. But you should also share why it's important for them. What did they get out of it? What's this going to do for them? Maybe it's financial, maybe it's other, but I would encourage you to get to know your people to find out what is important for them and what did they need to get out of it. Because if their needs are served by you achieving your goals, everyone is going to be working in cohesion. Again, the organization will be more likely to succeed. And that's what we're trying to do when we set goals. We want to do everything we can to increase our chances of success, right? Then you're going to explain the plan work. Hey, these are the work plans. This is the work that's going to be required to achieve this goal. This is how we're going to track and measure our progress. This is what accountability looks like. This is when we're going to be meeting. This is the communication plan. Here's feedback that you can give on stuff, right? And you want to teach all of that stuff, clear instruction, clear results, right? If you want to get this result clearly, you need to give clear instruction and teach people how that works. Now it's the buy-in piece. Ask if anyone has questions. Ask if they got concerns about the goal or the plan. Just because you thought it was feasible and viable and all that stuff from where you sit doesn't mean that people on the front lines might see it the same way. They might have questions. They might have concerns. They might say, hey, we just lost this big client, or this one huge contract's not renewing next year. They might cover a blind spot for you. So you have to have that conversation. This is not a one-sided conversation. You have to get this, and you got to make sure that everyone has their questions and concerns, discussed and covered and addressed in that meeting. And then once you have that piece, then you can confirm understanding the goal and make sure everybody is bought in on the same page, right? I will say there are times where you might have a question or concern that comes up that actually derails the meeting. It might be a legitimate concern that somehow got overlooked that makes you want to go back and rethink the plan. That is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Celebrate that someone on your team had the wherewithal and the insight to give you that type of feedback, and then go back, be a good leader, take that information, adjust the plan accordingly, and then have this meeting again. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That's perfectly fine. So encourage that feedback. Your people are smarter than you might be aware of, right? Once everyone buys in, confirm the understanding of the goal and the plan, and then you're going to get at it. Step 7, align the vision. This goes back to a little bit of why it's important to your people, but what you want to do, and I talk about vertical alignment all the time, and that's that line that just goes from the very top of the organization, and it's the goal, the mission, the vision, all of that stuff to the very bottom of the organization, and everyone in the company should be able to touch the line. Everyone should be able to put a hand on that line and know exactly how they hold that line up, how they connect to that line, how they support that line, and you want to be talking about, hey, our mission as a company, our vision of company is this, and that's going to help us achieve this goal that we just talked about, and back office administration, this is going to be your contribution to this. You're going to make sure that we have all these things and we're compliant, people are getting paid and all of that stuff, and our people out there depend on you to get their paycheck every single Friday, and that's really important to them. That's the tangible thing that our people come to work for us at. And recruiters, like you've got to be filling these orders and getting these people out and servicing our clients, and salespeople, your contribution is creating all these opportunities. And if you don't do that, then recruiters can't do their job. And if recruiters aren't doing their job, then, they show all that interconnectivity and interaction between each other about how everyone is actually kind of touching the line and contributing to the growth and success of the company as a team, right? And then you should be able to tie that back to what your organization's mission and vision are and why it's important, right? And again, ideally, you know your people well enough that you can actually align it to their personal and professional goals, right? You might have people on your team, and if you're not asking this, you should, where they want to grow within your company. Because if you don't ask them that, I guarantee someone else outside of your company is going to be asking them that question, and they're going to answer it, and their path is going to go somewhere else. And if you've got superstar talent, you do not want that to be the case. So if you know that someone's like, hey, I really want to be, maybe your company's not big enough to have a VP of business development, but you got a great sales manager. And maybe that sales manager is like, hey, I would love to be a vice president of business development someday. Okay, well, let's talk about what that looks like. Let's help you on this goal. And then you basically create the plan in your company, and you show that person how the company achieving certain levels of growth is going to get bigger. You're going to add layers of management. Those positions are going to be created. And the people that work to create those positions are going to be first in line for those positions, right? And you share that with that person, but then understand why they want that title. Is it something important about the title, about the responsibility, about the paycheck? What is it they're looking to do, and what's the impact that'll have in their lives? And then you can help align that. Those typical alignments aren't done publicly in your meetings. Those are the side conversations that you have to say, hey, this goal is important because I know that you wanted to move from this location to this other location because you're planning a family and you want to have more, a bigger plot of land. You want to have a better school district, whatever it might be. You want access to those things for your family, and it's going to be achieved by us achieving these goals, right? And you connect that alignment. Or maybe there's a bonus goal plan that you have, and maybe they're trying to save up money to put a down payment on a house, right? And you're like, hey, if we hit these goals, you can have a $20,000 bonus or a $30,000 bonus or whatever, and that can contribute to that down payment on that house that you want to get, right? Because that's why everyone shows up to work. Like, nobody shows up to work to do the job. Everyone shows up to work because what they're going to get out of that job that's going to benefit their life in some way. Yeah, there's fun jobs. There's jobs that people like to do. But at the end of the day, it's what they get out of that job and how it impacts their personal lives and the lives of the people that they care about that really matter the most. And if you want to have your people bought in and working to achieve the goal, that's really what you need the level of alignment you need to create to have a high performing organization. Step 8, work the plan. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to get to work on the plan. We're going to measure, review, report on the KPIs on the prescribed timeline, typically weekly, keep on track with the team huddles, the meetings, report progress, hold people accountable to success. Hey, what's going on? And if the KPIs are a little bit off, we're going to dig into those with the KPI keepers and find out what's going on. Celebrate the wins. It's a long year. It is a long time between now and where we're trying to go. It's a winding road, and there's going to be a lot of potholes along the way. There are going to be ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and grow in the valleys and celebrate the peaks. When we win, celebrate the win. Most people come to work and they just do not have the level of gratitude or appreciation or recognition or acknowledgement or validation in their lives, and they crave that. We're human beings, we're social beings, and we need that. And celebrating the wins and calling people out for how they're contributing to the growth of the organization is just a great way to emotionally enrich your people, kind of fill the emotional tank, if you will. But again, it's not going to be a win every week. You win some, you lose some. There's going to be some valleys. Those are the times that we grow. We come together, we rally as a team, we rally around the cause, and it's like, okay, life is against us and it's thrown us a curveball, but we're going to get through this together. And this is what we're going to need to do. Let's dig in and go, right? And you get people rallied around the cause to dig out of the valley, and you grow in the valleys, right? And then adjust the plan as necessary. Plans are dynamic. The thing is like, I guess the 3 adages that you hear is a battle plan goes out the window upon first enemy contact. A business plan goes out the window upon first customer contact. And Mike Tyson was famous for saying you can have a plan until you get punched in the face. Every plan is going to get hit. You're going to, in this industry, staffing, recruiting, a lot of variables. We're the only industry where our product talks back, right? So it's going to need changes. This is dynamic. Don't be so steadfast and rigid in your plan that you're not willing to make the necessary adjustments based on what your KPIs and your people are telling you, right? And step 9, wash, rinse, repeat. Once you've actually gone through this process and you do this over and over again, and you use this as your framework for laying a strategic plan and doing all the work within it, this is going to be a good underlying model for you to forecast the growth and align your people and do resource and capacity alignment, professional development. Everything can be tied to this process that you can follow. So again, I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of this issue of Staffing Monthly. I hope you got something out of this session to be able to give clear instructions, get clear results, and help you get the goal that you want in a way that's going to increase your chances for success. Thank you, and until next month.